Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this partner spotlight, our first ever partner spotlight, with what was probably one of our first ever partners. I was about to say partners in crime, but considering the topic, we'll avoid that wording. So, one of our first ever partners, Jax from Xama, is with me today to talk all things AML, Xama, Engager, and how we all work closely together to try and make you, our attendees' lives easier in implementing the best practice of AML, shall we say. So just a bit of housekeeping first. If you would like to ask any questions, by all means, please put them into the Q&A box so I can make sure we answer them all before we end the session today. If you put any questions into the webinar chat, we'll do our best to spot them, but we may miss them, so you're better off putting them into the Q&A. So lots and lots of people are in the room, so we will crack on. So Jax, for those few people on this call, I mean, just to put some context into this, we know 59% of all Engager users have plugged Engager into Xama. So not a small number of fellow users. But for those in the room that maybe they're using a different AML tool, maybe they're not using anything, tell them about yourself, about Xama, and how, what is your mission? What are you trying to achieve over at Xama?
Yeah, thanks, Johan, and hello, everyone. I see a lot of familiar names and some not familiar, so most of you might already have seen me around. But yeah, I mean, won't surprise people that we're an AML software. We started, our company's about 6 years old. We started really in the world of AML about 4 years ago. So the intention was never really to get into AML. I don't think anybody kind of sets off being excited about getting into AML so much. But we've always been about integration, streamlining processes, and specifically for accountants. And we just kind of happened to come across this amazingly underserved pain point for accountants, which was how do we plug in these kind of different bits of tools that helps you streamline AML? How do we connect them together? Things like collecting IDs, being able to extract information, linking that to being able to do an AML check, those kind of things. And I mean, we've learned a hell of a lot over the last 4 years on what the needs were, but very early on, we could see there was a huge disconnect between the onboarding process and streamlining of AML. But we come from an integration background. So our very first product only had an API. We didn't have any kind of front end solution. So you couldn't log into Xama. You could only use Xama through other systems. So at the very core of what we do, what we believe in is that AML should be integrated into your existing practices. It shouldn't be something that sits on the side, something that is an afterthought, something that you log in and go in and type some information into a third-party system. We learned that that was a very hard sell to just sell an API. I mean, nobody really gets that. So we did build a front end over the last 3 years, and we've been very, very happy to have so many accountants and bookkeepers come on board with us. But really at the core of what we do is to try and integrate it into other systems. And I think, you know, that really shines through in those numbers. Like 59% is an incredible number who's tried it. And I can kind of, I mean, fingers crossed, most people who tried out never kind of turns back. It's like one of those things, once you've clicked, it's something that you don't want to turn back on and do something different. So yeah, that's us. Yeah, we're basically, just as a side point, we're AML only. Like, that's our thing. There's a lot to do in the AML space. We're not kind of trying to duplicate what people in the practice management world is doing, and that's why I think it works so well to set these two things side by side. The other thing is we We only work with accountants and bookkeepers, and we only work with those who's based in the UK. It means we can really kind of target a full solution at those, at that kind of vertical. We're a small team, much like you guys at Engager, and we're very much in terms of trying to support accountants from when they start out to when they have thousands of clients. That's our mission.
Fantastic. And yeah, like we looked at AML, as every practice management software will look at AML and they'll go, do we, don't we, do we dabble and try and do something ourselves? And let's face it, it's not going to be very good. And even if we do it ourselves, actually, we're probably just plugging into another tool and white labeling it. And we were looking at it, and this was about 3 years ago now. And it was at that time when every governing body was clamping down and inspecting every other person and handing out penalties left, right, and centre. And we were just like, that we could try and do this, but we'd lose years of our development time focusing on this one little thing. Because what we like to do is we like to do things properly, which is then when we chatted to you, Jax, and we said, right, we want an integration because we'd seen what you'd already done with some other practice management tools. And it's like, we want an integration, but we want, like, Peter's one of those, our lead developer, he's one of those one more thing kind of guys. Like, he likes to go above and beyond. So when we looked at your API and you were like, yeah, we can do this, and we'd love a practice management software that would do that, it just seemed to make complete sense to use that API.
And I think when we started AML, we kind of had the exact same thing. We kind of thought, oh, we'll start with AML, and then we'll build out like proposals and like all these things that we knew would feed into the AML process. But the more you get into one kind of specialist area, it's really hard to tell people how incredibly deep the layers of AML can kind of go, and we're trying to make it simpler and simpler for people on the front and in terms of the customer and user journey. But it's like a little bit of an iceberg where if you look underneath the surface, the amount of technology and things that you need to do in order to get to that point is incredibly deep. And if you start to kind of dilute that, you really lose a lot of your kind of, in our case, our competitive advantage in just being the best AML tool. And then we kind of looked around and say, well, who's got the same mentality in terms of that kind of practice management systems. We linked in with others as well, but of course with you guys too. And we're looking around constantly about how do we use other people. And I'm a massive supporter of founder-led businesses, who hasn't taken enormous amount of funding, because all of them need to have that mentality of kind of having a laser focus on the thing that they're good at and solving customers' problems, and making customers successful. And those are the kind of people we like to work with.
Brilliant. And I think the other part, the other challenge with, before Xama started coming along and stuff, that we all had our verify options and various other tools that governing bodies were doing wheeling and dealing behind the doors and convincing their users they got themselves a really good deal out of it. But doing AML properly was prohibitively expensive, which when it's a compliance thing, it shouldn't be. Like, it needs to be as affordable as possible and as efficient as possible. Whereas, when I first started out, it was all PDFs that you couldn't edit. You had to type them all out yourself, and you had to type out a risk assessment every time, and you had to get forms signed, and it was horrible. Whereas when we found Xama for my own firm, it's just saved us so much time, and it's, I finally started sleeping and not worrying about Xama. Sorry, AML. I didn't have to worry about AML anymore because it was all dealt with properly.
It's incredible how from 4 years ago, how things have progressed over time. And there's now, a few more kind of solutions out there, like the noise on online, like on social media, everything about AML has come hell of a long way, which is a good thing. Um, but yeah, absolutely. What the first project, just to give a little bit of context to this and how that's progressed. The first project that we did, a customer, and this is how we got into AML. An accountant, a fairly large accountant, asked us, could you integrate, they were using Salesforce at the time, similar to HubSpot and those kind of things. And they asked us, could you integrate AML into Salesforce? What we wanted was to collect an ID, do an AML check, and do some monitoring on PEP and sanctions. And they had a contract with Credit Safe, and we integrated those two systems together. We thought, oh, that was, it's not hard, one integration. I think that project ended up, and we didn't charge large daily fees or something, but it probably cost them about somewhere between 20 and 30,000 pounds just to get very basic kind of workflow and these things talking to each other together. And really, it was that kind of thinking, like, how on earth, does it cost that much to kind of streamline this pain point for people? And we just from the very start, like again, we're a small company. In order for us to get customers, we had to be competitive on price. And so that's been absolutely at the core of what we wanted to do. We wanted to give some people something to adopt really quickly, really cheaply, not compromise on the quality. Like, you could pay a hell of a lot more for a much less of a product, but we want and be in it for the long haul, as we are, to kind of take them from literally lots of customers come to us, they haven't even set up their website yet, to customers who then end up with 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 clients. So that's our real goal, and I think we've really achieved that. We get a lot of feedback from those smaller accountants, being quite thankful that we're giving them a chance to get good systems in place from the beginning, rather than being. I'm sure you guys get it as well with your pricing structure, that there's the ability to grow with you guys, rather than being locked into a 3-year contract or whatever. Like, that is just the typical thing that happens in the AML space.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of our core goals was, right, how do we make practice management affordable for someone starting out? Like, I didn't have practice management tools in my practice until I hit 80 odd clients because just wasn't affordable. And
Yeah.
then every single time I took on like a part-time person, because that was my growth strategy, was if I need a new team member, I'll go part-time first because then I can afford that quicker. And then I'll either offer them full-time hours. If they don't want that, we go and get another part-timer. But then I came across what I call the software tax because I'm being charged per user. So someone could be just doing 10 hours a week and it was costing me another 40 quid a month just for them to have a login. At which point you question, do I spend it? Do I not? And then you realize all the time efficiencies that you're losing and because you're not spending it. And it was just horrible. So that's why we've modeled our pricing the way we have. But like when we were looking for an AML tool, the bit that we really liked about you guys was there was no subscription. It was pay as you go. Like, it's all well and good saying, oh, it's 30 quid a month and you get X amount of credits a month and that rolls over. And it's like, yeah, but some months I'm going to need more. Some months not going to need, I might go through 6 months of quietness for leads, and then credits that only roll over 2 months expire. It's not value for money. Whereas you guys will just pay as you go. You buy the credits as you need it. I mean, I now go in to do my bank transactions on QuickBooks, and it's like, oh, we've been doing more AML checks then because there's loads of little transactions going out. And it's like, I don't even notice it anymore until I sit there and do my bank reconciliation. But I believe you've just done an update overnight, literally last night. You launched a new.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't planned or coordinated. You'll know that software just doesn't work. Like, you can't just say, oh, we're going
Can't
to
hold
release
stuff back.
something on that date. But yeah, I mean, one of the things we did launch a subscription about a year ago, which was, we do kind of two things. We sell on third party it's data, like, no one, this is where AML, like pricing, becomes very complicated, because we're reliant on a bunch of other providers who can provide data, who provides first, like, best in class verification services, all those kind of things. And we're kind of the people who has to put it all together and essentially act as a reseller in some way. And that becomes very, very complicated. And I mean, there's a very big risk that we take in essentially selling people just what they need, because we can't purchase on that same basis. But again, it gives us that kind of competitive advantage, and it gives us our customers, and we just trust in that process that that'll work out for us, and it has done, and it really does. But on the other side, we've been developing and investing huge amount of effort in our own kind of AML technology that lies below the surface. Things like company's house monitoring. We've replicated in real time the entire company's house database, and we keep that up to date every second when we get notifications in from company's house. Things like developing our own document management system, which has got OCR built in to extract data. The development of our AML Academy. So we've been investing massively in our own stuff, because ultimately we don't want to just be a reseller. We have to be, it has to kind of prop up our product, but we want to be more than that. We want to take part in developing actual technology that makes these things better as well. And so we did introduce a subscription which we can get people to use and don't have to pay kind of per usage. So it's a little bit more like, okay, you can extract as much information from documents as you like within there. But we kind of had two plans. We had a premium plan, we had a premium plus plan. And I don't really want to use Xero as a kind of example here, but you basically were putting people
You don't put your prices up that regularly, do you?
Well, we didn't want to put people into plan. Well, we did put people into plans which potentially didn't quite fit what they needed. Like in this plan, you could monitor 200 companies, but you could only have so many people on the academy. And on the other plan, both of those things went up. But every firm is different. And I mean, we should have known that from the beginning, but pricing is really, really complicated. Any case, like last night, we released an update, and I'll show it hopefully a little bit when we
Feel free to. You've got
dig through the thing. Well, let me show it to you now. So hopefully I'll share the right screen. But just so people can understand what I'm talking about a little bit, we now have relabeled our premium and premium plus plan to core. And essentially, once you've got your subscription up and running, we have a base price of £13 per month. So £13 per month give you access to a whole bunch of features. And then really there's two drivers which increases your subscription. And that's around how many companies you monitor and how many people wants to use the Academy, which is our kind of fully outsourced training service. And basically, I can go in here and I can completely just adjust this and see how that's going to feed into my subscription. And we're not kind of going upwards only. Absolutely, it's very hard to actually downgrade people technologically. So we're asking people, if they do want to downgrade, you can go in and you can fill in a form. Let us know exactly what your levels are that you want to be on, and then we can adjust that for you. And yeah, we're really proud of this. I think it just goes into what we want to be as an organization in terms of people just paying for what they need. And we've got some, other stuff that we want to obviously put within the core plan, but we'll also be launching one or two other modules that sits next to that, which again, people can opt into or not opt into. So yeah, that's pretty much. We'll obviously send all our users an email later today as well to invite them to come and do this. We estimate that a lot of our customers would be saving more than 50% on what they're currently paying. So absolutely, we're going to take a bit of a hit here in terms of how much subscription we get in from our existing subscribers. We hope that there will be others who, at the £13 a month level would join. And really what we want people to do is kind of start using these monitoring solutions earlier on, because the history that's being built up is going to be so valuable in the future when we start integrating that into risk assessments and so on. But basically, the main thing was we want to get people on the right plan, and not on a plan that's kind of disjointed for them.
Right. Makes complete sense to me. And I'm not like, was that, so that's £6 a month to put someone on the academy. I mean,
Well, it also goes down in
wow.
price. So it's
Like,
only the first person that's £6 a month. And then let's say I want to have 10 people, it's basically £33. So it goes down to about £3 per month, and so on. The same for the companies as well. I mean, again, we've been running the academy now since the beginning of this year. We've streamlined a lot of the processes around it. We've learned a lot. There's about 350 people now being trained through the academy. And again, the feedback's been really great. So yeah, it's kind of learning from that and adjusting our pricing accordingly to see that we get this stuff right. It's super hard. I'm sure you guys find it as well. The pricing is probably one of the hardest thing to kind of get right. And it's like anything in a product to keep. And I'm sure that the accountants out there as well is probably constantly working at pricing. And yeah, it's no different for us. We need to do that as well. Difference here is the accountants who's our customers is also our investors. So we're not paying out money to investors. We don't have shareholders to pay back funding that we've raised. We kind of want to put back all that value back to the accountants who's paying us to use our services.
yes, I saw, I won't name the software, but a popular software published their accounts the other day, and they spent £40 million on interest payments to investors. And it's
Yeah,
like,
it's
what?
crazy, isn't it?
You could have done a lot of good with that money, but instead of spending that on development, you've just spent it on interest. And what have you done with the initial investment? Hired a stupidly large sales team, stupidly large events team, and got a lot of PR out of it, but not very much in the way of sales. So, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a very big passion of mine. I could go on forever about like how I don't think like 90% of businesses serving the accountant and bookkeeping software companies, 90% of them don't need massive financial backing
yeah.
to do it. And it doesn't add anything to the customer experience because you've got it. There's some products like you have to spend a lot of money to get enough volume of customers to make the product work. So absolutely, some products like specifically like payment type stuff, like those kind of stuff need a lot of investment. But things like AML software, things like practice management software, we're working in a vertical serving a very particular market. And as soon as you take on massive amount of investment, that kills the vertical for you because you have to expand horizontally, and that just dilutes the product for everyone. But I could go on forever on that topic, and I won't
Oh,
because that's not
you
why
and
we're
me
here.
both. You and me both, right? But that's why we like when we're looking at who we partner with for solutions. Like, we partnered with yourselves. We're working with Xenon to bring their functionality into Client Engager and stuff like that. Like, one of the things we're always looking at is, do they sit in line with our own ethics, culture, and ethos? And yeah, like one of the most regular questions we used to get asked, not so much anymore. We've kind of proven ourselves, I think, but was, when are you going to sell out? And it's like, well, hang on a minute. Have a look outside of the accounting industry. There is other options than selling shares to investment corporations. There's cooperative buyouts, there's management buyouts, there's so many solutions to
Yeah.
a shareholder wanting to step away.
Yeah.
However, in the accounting and bookkeeping industry, software side of things, all we've seen for the last 5 or so years is big capital investors coming in, buying it up, cutting off development, cutting off investment, hoping to grow the sales, not growing the sales, making redundancies, and just disappointing users.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how long, how long will that continue? I don't know. We get the same kind of questions. We probably have a very similar answer to you. I mean, every software founder has to kind of consider where they're going to exit a business. We can't run software forever, but there
Absolutely.
are very much different ways in which you can do it, which doesn't like which means your business can grow and be more effective for your customers rather than what we've been seeing in the accounting industry. And yeah, we're not going anywhere soon anyway. So, but
And
yeah, there's loads of options there. That hasn't been very good at the accounting world, I don't think.
no, I think, and I always say, so I always say in life, there's two certainties, death and tax. As a
Yeah,
business owner, there's three certainties, death, tax, and exiting your business. Now,
yeah, in
whether
whichever
you
way
exit
that.
willingly or whether it's because a bus hits you, you've exited your business.
Yeah.
So you need to plan for those three certainties in life as a business owner. But there's more options for planning than just convincing some of the big investors to go and buy your shares and destroy the business that you've spent a lot of time and effort making fantastic. So let's talk about AML as a process and how Engager and Xama work together um, to take that client from they've signed their letter of engagement through to we're AML compliant and what we need to do on an ongoing basis using the Xama suite and how it links into Engager. Now, I believe you said you've got it on your screen.
I
Um,
do. You are more than welcome to dump me into the live demo this time if you want.
let's do that.
Um, yeah, no, I mean, I want to kind of just before I go back into and start iterating through this, to me, it's really important that everybody recognizes that each firm is different. So we see a lot of firms doing things in a similar way, of course, because there's only so many different ways you can do a particular action, but almost nobody does it exactly the same. So I think where a good integration comes in is allowing you to work in slightly different ways. And also in Xama, we don't ever tell somebody this is how you do AML.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to show you one example of how people do things, but there's a few things that I want to highlight because I've been in integrations all my life. And there's some things that Engager does, which is very, very hard to do. And you can really tell the level of detail and care to attention that they've gone to in order to make it work in that kind of flexible way. And so what I'm going to do, and I'm sure everybody on here probably knows what Engager looks like. Most of you know what Xama look like. I'm just gonna clear out some of the tabs here that I don't need. You
And
guys
yeah,
can
we're
see my
exactly the same Engager. Like, we'll share how I might do it in my firm, but I'm not telling you that's the right way or the wrong way. I'm telling you that's one way.
yeah,
Like, there's a lot of softwares out there in the last few years that have been very keen to tell you whether you're doing something right or wrong in their opinion. Whereas we're here to give you a tool to enable you to run your practice how you want to.
yeah,
And Zama works in such a way that you can build your process however you like. We can show you some various ways of using it, but ultimately it's flexible enough, as is Client Engager, for you to be able to do it, build your own
yeah,
process and do it your way.
yeah. And people, you're going to have a process today that's not going to be the same process as what you have 2 or 3 years from now. So you also need it's fine to find a solution that works for you today, but is that same solution going to work for you 2 years from now? Very unlikely if that solution doesn't allow you to kind of be flexible in the way that you're working. So what I've got here for the people who don't know Xama, basically we have a client list like most other applications. Everything AML related goes into Xama. So what we want is essentially a client list within here that that replicates or represents your client list within Client Engager. Now, I've got two clients already synced across. What is really nice about Client Engager is that you've got a flexible way in which you can create and link either existing clients. So if you're already a Xama user and you're just looking at Engager at the moment, really simple process to, oh, sorry, to kind of create two lists of clients and then link them together rather than be worried about creating duplications and stuff like that. That's the first thing which Engager's done, which makes it really easy to kind of adopt different things at different times. What I'm just going to show is if I've got, so Exclusive, they're our accountants, and well, I used to work for them. So I'm going to use them as an example. They're not linked to Xama yet, so I can go into my external systems here, and I can then basically say, doesn't look like that exists in Xama yet. If it did, I would just be able to link them. In this case, I'm just going to create that client within Xama. So immediately I have this kind of ability to sync stuff across. If I go to my client list now in here, Exclusive has appeared there. Now, again, AML functionality can be so different to what you have within your practice management solution. So immediately there's a couple of things that I might want to do in here that practice management solutions isn't built for, you know. So I want to know, do I know really who the beneficial owners are of this business? That's kind of like, let's say that's the first thing I'm going to have a look at. Now, I've got core activated in here today, so I'm going to show off some of our core features, which is the subscription, the £13 a month thing that I said. And I can in here immediately see kind of what does this graph, what does the ownership look like for Exclusive. And this we can build because of what I said earlier. We have that full data set, up-to-date data set for Companies House. And we can also then say, well, actually, what I'd like to do is I would also like to monitor any changes that happens to that ownership graph. And I can just activate the monitoring there. So you can immediately start looking at what you need to do for AML. Obviously, the one thing that everybody basically comes to us to before they've kind of known anything else about AML is, how do I collect an ID document through you? Or how do I run an AML check? In my mind, that's about maybe 10 to 20% of the AML process that you go through. So we tend to not put much of an emphasis on that, but it is certainly what drives people to come and use our product. In this case, I've got this person, which is, it matches like a published example passport that we have. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask her to submit her identity document. Now, from Xama, you can send that out directly from here, and it'll just go as a request to them. You can also add in biometric checks. I'm not going to do that because it interferes with the video, proof of address documents, things like that. And all I'm just going to do is send off a request for this person to submit their document. That request is being tracked. You can view it on the dashboard. You can go in, you can send a request reminder. Again, if that person doesn't onboard with you, we have the ability to cancel these requests. We refund you the money, something I found out nobody else does. Basically, everybody else, as soon as you've sent the request, your money's gone, whether that person complete the request or not. I didn't even realize that, but something apparently that we're quite good at. Very, very briefly, for those who haven't seen this, I think most will be kind of familiar with the type of journey that we go through. It's a browser-based journey, so people can do it on their laptop, but most people do it on their phone. And I'm just going to put in some fake information in here, so don't expect our results to be brilliant. But basically, we just ask always for the home address. And then I'm going to upload this example passport that we have, which is this one. And we do some pre-checks on our side, things like expiry dates, those kind of things. So we will pick that up. We don't block people from submitting documents. We're not a bank, which kind of never speaks to people. So we get a lot of customers who's got end clients who's got accessibility issues. They might not be the youngest people. We don't want to create that enormous amount of friction that some of these systems can do. But we do ask people just to confirm that they're going to do that document. So we're always working at this kind of balance of how do we make it so that we collect high quality images, and have a good client experience as well. In any case, that basically goes through a verification process. It comes into the system here. Now, what we will see, like I've just been doing stuff within Xama here, but what I can immediately also see within Client Engager, if I go to this same company, I can start seeing and actually viewing what's going on. So we always use an overview of information within practice management systems. There's no need for us to highlight what was the passport number or what's even the person's name and date of birth, home address. There's no need necessarily to sync that information up to the practice management system, because really some of that information might be shareholders that's got nothing to do with the operations of the business. And they should really be locked away within your AML system. It takes away a massive headache in terms of GDPR, segregation of duties and all that kind of things by actually having it in two different systems. But what is really useful is that we can have this overview. From a usage perspective, I always suggest to people, even if haven't got to the risk assessment part, and I've actually done this the wrong way around now. I'm going to basically tell you that I didn't do this in the right way. But I prefer to see that people actually start a risk assessment right at the beginning of starting to do their AML process. You don't need to complete a risk assessment at all at the beginning. But what is really useful, and also in terms of the integration here, if I just start a risk assessment, I'm not going to have time to go through all these things in detail. But basically, this is our risk assessment engine, which allows you to carry out the risk assessment for every client. But what that allows you to do within Client Engager is to immediately see, okay, I've got something in progress here. So when I go to my client list, I can very easily create a filter here, and I can basically say, show me any risk assessments that's in progress. And those are the people that you're actually in the process of doing AML for. And so you can manage that process either from Client Engager. You can, of course, use the lists and filters within Xama as well. But I kind of always feel these operational things where people need to have an overview, it lives best within the practice management system where you're doing everything else. Then I guess the final thing this is a really cool feature of the integration, I think. If I go to this person's, I'm going to do it two ways because I want to just show you something. I need to clear the filter. Sorry, I'm not as good with Engager as I am with.
You're a lot better than anyone else I've done demos with.
I need to apply this, don't I? Come on.
Click the X.
Or I can add one.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to do is just in here update their address details. So home address, if I just put in here 26 Fake Street as well, it's not going to be exactly the same as what I got from from the client itself. But I'm going to just put in, that's the postcode. And I'm going to put in United Kingdom. Tip for anybody using Client Engager, use United Kingdom as the country. It solves a lot of the kind of little conflicts you might get, but just something we've picked up. As long as you do that, everything works really, really nicely. Now, what would have happened there is if I go back to this particular person, I have that information. It's instant. It just syncs across from Client Engager into Xama. But what I also got here is basically a different address from my customer. So what's happened here is now I've got one home address in my practice management system. My customer has now given me a different home address. So what I'm going to do in Xama is I'm going to replace this address because I trust the address that the customer's given me most recent the most. And so I'm just going to copy all this information and add that into my contact record within Xama. And now I hope this works as it did when I just was preparing everything. But what comes up within, has it worked?
The notification bell at the top.
Is it that one?
Yeah, there you go. There's a
Perfect. So what's happened within Client Engager, it's picked up that I've actually made a change within my AML system. It allows me to look at the differences that's been carried out. It allows me to evaluate that and then confirm that to be synced into Client Engager as well. I wanted to show that because from somebody who comes out of like an integration background, anything that syncs two ways is incredibly complicated. And you have to spend a hell of a lot of time to make that work really well. And I think that's something that Engager has done amazingly well. And it just deserves a shout out because it's so easy to take these things for granted. But if you go and look at other systems, it's rare that you find things properly syncing in two directions. So very well done to the Engager team. Yeah, and I don't, I think that's probably enough. I don't kind of want to
that's fantastic.
waste people's time to go through risk assessments and things like that. But really, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea about, it's just really easy to work between the two systems. But ultimately, you need to figure out exactly what works for your practice to make it work for you.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. That was fantastic. That was the easiest demo I've done in a very long time. In fact, if ever, because I've not had to do anything. That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Jax. But yeah, that conversation hasn't finished of how we work together. So we're already talking about various different things. Like we're looking at the opportunity to, instead of your client having to get an email with a link and then it opens a website, we're actually looking at how we can embed that link from Xama into the client's portal so that they can do it all from within the client portal, just to make that journey a bit more succinct. So we're working on that whole onboarding stuff, as most of you know, between now and the end of the year, start of next year, basically. Lots and lots going on in it. But one of those parts is how do we make that AML checking process a little less stressful for the client and for you, the accountants and bookkeepers. But on top of what we're talking to each other about, which is all sorts of different things, what's on your roadmap for the next, however long you guys plan your roadmap for, Jax? What have our users got to look forward to?
Yeah, I know it's always a tricky one. We try to keep it to the things that we're already working on, because you know how easy it is to shift or need to shift priorities. Just on that point, which you've just mentioned, and maybe just quickly, a question came through. Somebody asked, is it better to set up a client in Engager first or in Xama first? My advice is always to set it up in the practice management solution first. You're probably going to be inputting more information within the practice management side of things. It helps you to then just transfer what you need to into Xama. But of course, if you've already got a Xama account or you've already got users in there, then you can just link them together. But generally speaking, it works best if you're whatever that data flow is, whether it comes from proposal software or whether you're using Engager, letter of engagement, whatever it is, to kind of go into that flow from the practice management side of things. And just on the
process as well with that one. So some firms will do AML checks before they even entertain a letter of engagement. At which point, if the AML checks and identifying that person is the first thing in your process when you take a phone call and someone wants to be a client of yours, then putting them into Xama makes sense first. If, like in my firm, we've got one of the first lines in our letter of engagement is this letter of engagement is subject to satisfactory and ongoing AML compliance checks. So that one line means that we can have a conversation with our client, with the prospect, we can price them, we can send their letter of engagement, and then they go onto our AML process.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of a debate there whether you need to do AML on people before you do a letter of engagement. I don't think that is really what the guidelines say, although some people might interpret it that way. Really, you shouldn't sign a letter of engagement with somebody that you've done zero KYC on. Like, you need to at least know why this person wants to do business with you, or what they want to do. So there's an element of knowing your client before you do that, but the kind of detailed due diligence can come after the fact of the letter of engagement as well. Yeah, so just on your point of integrating better with other systems, it's absolutely our long-term goal to say to people, like, there's only one touch point for your customer when they're onboarding. We don't want people to be in different places doing different things. The onboarding process is so disjointed historically that we don't want AML to be that separate thing. So wherever we can put that into an existing, whether it's a proposal, whether it's a letter of engagement, whether it's a portal, if you think about it, we want it to be a little bit like making a Stripe payment or setting up a Go cardless solution. You just go off, you upload your ID, and you're back into that kind of flow of what you want people. You don't want that customer to leave that kind of one journey of onboarding. So we're super excited about what we are going to be able to do with you guys on that. And we've already developed the technology for it, so we're just waiting for people to plug it. So we essentially have an ID collection system that works like a Go cardless payment. Now I need to try and get this thing.
While you do that, there's a reason we are asked occasionally, why do we only plug into Xama? I mean, the reason is we've looked at other AML tools when they've come to speak to us, and their functionality through their APIs is nowhere near as good. So actually, by plugging into a tool that doesn't have the same functionality, it's not fair on that user. Because our users are so used to the standard that we deliver with Xama, that they're just better off using Xama. So we're always happy to look at other people. This isn't exclusive, as it were. However, we've got a minimum standard of functionality that we want our Engager users to experience with our connection to any product.
Yeah.
And if that other product can't deliver that, then you need to go and develop that and then come back to talk to us.
I mean, it's also it's very hard to find products which have integration as their kind of core feature, if I can call that it, with us. I mean, it's just kind of, that's from the very beginning, like I said, we only had an API, and I'm not just within the accounting industry, but everywhere it's super hard Some of the AML products that we integrate with charges you £10,000 just to get access to the API. Gives you an idea about that kind of world and how that looks like from a historically. Anyway, I've only got a few things to say. Some of these things have been on our roadmap for a very long time, and I do apologize. This is probably not the first time you'll see it on a slide, but in this case, it should be the last time that you see it in a slide. But I'm just going to run through a few exciting things that we're doing. So first of all, this is the bit that we launched last night. So we're going to hopefully open up our kind of premium features, or what used to be called premium, our core features now, open to more people. I've gone through that in detail anyway. The next thing is we're now starting to do our first tests with a new integration partner called Comply Advantage. They're a PEP and sanctions monitoring provider. So the way this works is you do an AML check. As part of an AML check, you get an indication whether somebody's politically exposed or sanctioned. But it doesn't give you the ability to then monitor those individuals or monitor your client to know whether that status changes. We've chosen Comply Advantage because of their really good kind of interface. And what it allows us to do is to allow our customers, so the accountants who use our product, to be able to configure what they're looking for. The problem with PEP and sanctions monitoring solutions is the incredible amount of noise it can produce. Like, if you can't configure these things, typically the provider would say, we're just giving you everything. And by getting everything, you can be completely overwhelmed with the number of things you get. So it's being able to monitor on what level of political exposed people, you know, you don't necessarily need to know about your local councillor. They don't generally count as a person who's got enough influence to worry about. So you can start filtering them out. You can filter out people who's not alive anymore. You can filter out people who doesn't live in the same country or doesn't have the same year of birth. And you're going to be able to do that completely based on what you would like to do. Of course, we'll give you kind of guidelines as to where you might want to start, but then you can tweak it from there. And it's completely unique. Really, you'll only get that functionality if you start going directly to somebody Comply Advantage and buy at least 25,000 kind of monitoring checks for your business. That's kind of normally their kind of entry level. So we want to bring that kind of functionality to you. The other thing is the amount of information that you get from them is so much better. So this is just a search that I did on this person who is Jeremy Hunt's wife. And here you can kind of see that the level of detail. Those who use Xama will know we don't provide too much detail in relation to the PEPs, but here you can see a whole lot more information, including kind of links to websites and so on, which provides you more information about the people. So we're really excited to bring this in. Hopefully this is the last time this is on a slide. I've wanted to do this for like more than a year, but we're getting there. Next one, which is why also we want to encourage people to go to core. All of our monitoring solutions, we want to make part of risk assessment. So we've got a drive at Xama to automatically complete risk assessments to a large extent. So not on your behalf, the questions that you would answer, but one of the questions you're going to answer as part of a risk assessment is, you know, have the ownership changed of this business? Has there been any change in their political exposure, those kind of things? And by documenting everything that's going on in the background directly onto the risk assessment, you're starting to get a really rich risk assessment to work on before you've even started it. It's just all that kind of history feeding into it. And so that's one of the things that we're working on, more monitoring solutions and integrating that into the risk assessments. Big one, massive one in terms of what we are able to do going forward, custom fields. That'll be available on clients and contacts. It's already been developed on our back end, so we're just looking to plug that into the front end. And again, custom fields can feed into the risk assessments as part of the KYC requirements. So we can be much more flexible in terms of how we do a risk assessment by using kind of information that you've put onto a client record. And then interesting one for us, it was a little bit of a, I know we're almost out of time, so I'm rushing through these. It was a little bit of a hackathon that we did in one of our breakaways. We discussed and then developed the initial bits of a Google Drive integration with the idea of testing out really how people might use this. The real idea of this is we get a lot of, like, none of our clients come from, you know, almost none of them come from not having any documents. So how do you get the relevant documents that you already have organized into your AML system? Let's not kind of download and upload, creating lots of copies in local systems. Let's be able to just drag stuff across from your existing file structure into new one. But also, we realize people have had a urge or need to back up their documents, and being able to very easily do that to a different location without, again, downloading and uploading. We will also then go on to do OneDrive, SharePoint, and so on. And then finally, we've got more integrations, which we're already working on, but they are at the moment still kind of top secret. I put them on. I probably shouldn't have put it on, because now it just makes people wonder what they are, and I might get questions about it. But I'm just so excited about this stuff. It will revolutionize, I think, how accountants and bookkeepers do their risk assessments. And so that's really, you know, just something that we're already working on. We're already speaking to a bunch of partners, and it's going to be something special. So something to look out for. Hopefully I can announce that in the very near future. But yeah, that's it. There's more stuff, but hopefully that's the headlines.
Fantastic. Well, Jax, we are coming up to time. So, Jax, just thank you so much for joining us, for showing us what AML, when the integrations work nicely, can do, and when they're done properly. Hopefully, everyone that's attended has got a better idea of things maybe they need to start looking at. And, you know, if you're not doing your risk assessments in Xama already, which the status does pull through into Engager,
Yeah.
the power of what you are going to be building in the coming months to help populate those risk assessments. And can you imagine going to your governing body and go, when they say AML inspection time, and they go, shows your risk assessment, and at the moment, what is it? Yes, no box that you've got, maybe a little bit of text, where you're populating that information going, here's the proof that the political exposure hasn't changed. Here's the evidence of this. Here's the evidence of that. And yeah, with my fingers in as many pies as I have, I think I know what your top secrets are, to a certain degree. Not that you've told me, but I've heard on the grapevine, and that's very, very exciting as well. So yeah, very interesting direction, and it's going to add huge value to my firm's processes straight away. So yeah, really excited about that. And mainly, Jax, thank you for doing such an amazing demo and knowing Client Engager so well. That was incredible. Can I get you in to train the rest of my team on how to Client Engager?
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Johan. And I mean, our kind of commitment is just to, you know, we've got a team of 3 developers doing this stuff day in, day out. And yeah, we're still, I think, possibly 2 to 3 years off before I'm going to be happy kind of with what we're already thinking about adding. And it's really hard to kind of give that, explain that to people, but really for us, and what I try to convince people to do is get on that earlier rather than later. Like, the quicker you get the stuff in there, the quicker you get organized, the quicker you start adopting these things, the more you're going to be benefiting from what we're already doing. What exceeds, what you're already, the benefits that you can get. And I promise, that's going to be our commitment. We're not trying to do anything else. We're just going to be focusing on this one thing and supporting our partners and the integrations. It's pretty simple for us in that sense.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time. Absolutely loads of thank you comments coming in. Sue Haynes has had a demo on Wednesday for Xama and a great product. She'll be signing up today. Lots of people excited about the new enhancements that we're looking at that are coming to Xama and the future of Xama and Client Engager. So yeah, fantastic. For everybody else, thank you very much. If you've got there is a link. Okay. So for everybody, thank you very much for joining us. We will be doing a feature spotlight next Friday on forms. So getting your client data into Engager quickly, which means you can then push it through to Xama quickly.
Perfect.
And so I'll talk to you all next Friday. And don't forget, we'll be live on Wednesday night at 7:30 to go through tips, tricks, and see whatever updates we may or may not have to bring to you. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Jack.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.